Welcome back. This is the second part of our Sabbath study. We usually do two every Sabbath. We do one at 11 a.m. Eastern and then one around this time, 1 o'clock or so Eastern. This is the second part. And so we're studying Revelation chapter 2 and 3. We're studying the seven churches. And now we're actually just finished Revelation chapter 2 as we discussed and studied Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, and Thyatira. four of the seven churches. There's three churches left: Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. Now, I mentioned to you that we're in the Philadelphia time right now. We're in the Philadelphia time as I speak to you. So that's very important, obviously, for us because it's where we live. But all of them are important, and they all kind of build on each other. And Sardis is where we are right now. So let's discuss Sardis now. Sardis is interesting because of what Messiah says about them. Let's look at Sardis. Then we'll go to other parts of the Bible and look at other things that relate to this. But first, let's start with Sardis. And Sardis is Revelation chapter 3, beginning at verse 1. Revelation chapter 3, beginning at verse 1. I'm going to start with verse 1 and read just verse 1 for now. What he says about just entering into the conversation about Sardis. And unto the angel of the church in Sardis write, these things saith he that hath the seven spirits of Yah and the seven stars. I know thy works, that thou hast a name that thou livest and art dead. That's how he starts off with Sardis. They have a name that live and they're dead. What time period is this? Well, we know, as I mentioned to you earlier, that Pergamos was the 4th century with Constantine. Thyatira is the 6th century and the establishment of Christianity as an institution and the Roman Catholic Church as the head of that institution in 508 AD, which is the 6th century. Just to go a little further, in the 7th century, Islam was created. It wasn't created prior to that. The 7th century or 600 something AD, that's when Muhammad had his dream. That's when he went into the mountain. That's when he created Islam. Okay, the 7th century. The 8th century, after Christianity was created in the 7th century, after 100 years later, Islam was created in the 8th century. And quiet is kept. Islam was created with the help of the Catholic Church. Quiet is kept. Now in the 7th century. Now you got the 8th century. And you have a group of people in Eastern Europe called Khazarian. That nation in Eastern Europe, Khazaria, is what later became Russia. That group of people that was in Khazaria created their religion. It's what we call Judaism. That came out of Khazaria by people who are descendants of Ashkenaz. Who is Ashkenaz? Genesis chapter 10. Genesis chapter 10. Genesis chapter 10, as the children of Noah are getting off the ark and beginning whole nations and beginning nations upon nations out of those three men as it were. Let's look at Genesis chapter 10, beginning at verse 1. We're looking for Ashkenaz. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah: Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood. So he starts off with the lineage of Japheth. The sons of Japheth: Gomer and Magog. We've heard of Magog. And Madai and Yavan and Tupal and Meshach and Tiras. Okay, so you got Gomer the firstborn, then Magog, which is of Gog and Magog, and then the rest of these sons. So he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sons. Then the sons of Gomer, that's his firstborn. The firstborn son of Japheth, Gomer. So the first grandson of Japheth, Ashkenaz. So Ashkenaz is a grandson, the first son of Gomer, the first grandson of Japheth, Rephath and Togarmah. These are what we call Europeans. That's where all your Europeans come from Japheth. This is the area where they settled, where they came from. And then in verse 5, by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after their tongue, after their families, in their nations. So original Gentiles are Japhet. It says it right there. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided. That's your European nations. Okay, that's where your Irish, your Polish, your Greeks, your Italians, your Russians, your Belisarians, your Spanish, your UK Anglo-Saxon, all of them, Japhet. Okay, that's where they come from. Now, one of these Japhet's children, Ashkenaz, had children and created a nation that came into Khazaria. Khazarians wanted their own religion. They didn't want Catholicism and they did not want Islam. In the 8th century, they created their own. It was called Judaism. They used part of the books of Moses, part of them, as the foundation of this new religion. They really leaned heavily on these other books, spiritualist books, really magic books. Okay. And they created from those Talmud, which if you talk to a Jewish person, they will tell you Talmud is a holy book, because that's really where they come from. Okay. And they used the first 5 books of Moses to justify their creation of Judaism. Just the way the Christians use the New Testament to justify Christianity. Okay? Same principle. And of course, the Muslims use Muhammad and the Quran to justify Islam. Because if Muhammad was a false prophet, there's no Islam. Okay? And if the New Testament is not the Bible because it's only part of it, where you have to have all of the Bible together, then it's nothing, but they have to justify that by saying, no, the New Testament is the only valid thing, and the Old Testament is done away with. Or as they like to say, fulfilled. So Judaism uses the books of Moses as the basis of their existence, but they really lean on the Talmud. 6th, 7th, 8th centuries. That's where these 3 religions came from. All right. Now, of course, we know the true Abraham and his true children were 3,000 years before that. And the true Messiah came 6 centuries, or really in the case of the Judaism, 8 centuries before that. Okay. So that's where you have the establishment of these religions. Now, that being the case, when Messiah was speaking, whenever Messiah was speaking in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, whenever he was speaking, he's talking only to Israelites. Whenever he was speaking, he's not talking to Gentiles. His conversations were in the presence of Israelites. All four of the Gospels were written by men who were Israelites. Now, somebody tries to say like this, well, Luke was half. One of his parents was a Gentile, so he was a half Jew. Let me explain to you. You will never find any place in the Bible, where somebody's called half. You will never find it. Why? Where did we get calling people half this and half that from? You want to know where that comes from? Black people were so and are in some cases still so desperate to be accepted by the children of Japhet, the so-called white man. So desperate are they to be accepted that they will say, my son is half white In other words, please accept me because I'm half you. And in fact, sometimes when slave masters would have children with a particular Hebrew woman that they really liked, and the child came out looking more like the slave master, that child would get special privileges. Sometimes, not all the time now, but sometimes that child would get special privileges because they looked like a master. They could actually sometimes even what we call pass. What does that mean? Pass. That means they look so Caucasian, though they come out of a black woman, they look so Caucasian that other Caucasians would think that they were Caucasian. So that's where we started looking at what is half. It's born out of a desperation because you can't change this skin. Okay? Can't change it. But if you can claim half of the skin that's pale, maybe you can be treated better. Maybe you can get ahead. Maybe they'll accept you. That's where half came from. It's relatively new because it's not in the Bible. In the Bible, when a Hebrew man has a child with a woman that's not a Hebrew, that child is a Hebrew. When a Hebrew woman has a child with a man that's not a Hebrew, that child is a Hebrew. In the Messiah's lineage, there's Canaanites in his lineage. Judah had a baby with a Canaanite woman. In Messiah's lineage, there's Hittites. Solomon had a baby with a Hittite. In Messiah's lineage, there's Moabites. Ruth was a Moabite. And Boaz and her had a child that became the descendant of the Messiah. In the Messiah's lineage, there's people from Jericho. Rahab was a harlot in Jericho and married a man named Salmon, and they had a child, Boaz. Then Boaz married a Moabite woman, and they had a child, Jesse, who had a child, David, who became king. So any bloodline that has the blood of an Israelite is Israelite. And even the Caucasians in the South, in their worst racism, acknowledge this because they'll tell you if you got one drop of black blood, you black. They don't call you half. They call you nigger. Okay? So all this half stuff. So Luke was a Hebrew. Mark was a Hebrew. John was a Hebrew. And Matthew was a Hebrew. So whenever they're recording Messiah speaking, he's not speaking to Gentiles. He's speaking to Hebrew. Okay, that's important. Why? So when Messiah is speaking in Matthew chapter 24, when he's speaking in Matthew chapter 24, okay, and he's telling his disciples of what's going to come in the future. He's talking to his 12 Hebrew disciples. Okay. Okay. He's talking to 12 Hebrew disciples. Okay. So now in Matthew 24, one of the things he says is verse 14. Matthew 24, verse 14. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. This gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. Now, I submit to you, he was not talking about the Christian gospel of white Jesus. Well, he wouldn't be if what we said was true. In other words, if Christianity came with Constantine, and then later on in the 6th century with the Roman Catholic Church, that's not Hebrew. That's not from the apostles. That's from Japhet. So this gospel of the kingdom cannot be that. Okay? It cannot be that. Plus, white Christianity has gone already into all the world many years ago. Into all the world. All the denominations send hundreds of missionaries all over the planet to establish Christianity. Okay? And they've done it. Mormons send them all, and they love to send to Africa. Oh, they love to do that. Adventists send them all over. Jehovah's Witnesses, Pentecostals, and of course, Catholic. Everywhere. That ain't the one the Most High was talking about. So when he said this gospel of the kingdom, we already discussed. What is the faith that was once delivered unto the saints? What is the faith that was once delivered unto the saints? The Bible says that we should earnestly contend for the faith that was once delivered unto the saints. And in that same book of Jude, in that same vein, under that same thought, it says this. In Jude, of course, there's only one chapter in Jude, but it says, let's see. All right, starting at verse 3. Beloved, when I gave all diligence to write unto you of the common salvation, that is salvation experienced by all the Israelites and the grafted in nation, it was needful for me to write unto you and to exhort you that ye should earnestly contend for the faith which was once delivered unto the saints. Then he goes on. For there are certain men crept in unawares, who were before of old ordained to this condemnation, ungodly men, turning the grace of our Most High into lasciviousness, and denying the only Most High Yah and our Master, Yahushua the Messiah. So he talks about the faith delivered to the saints, and then he talks about a perversion of grace. And we talked about that. So grace is given to us from the Most High. It's his spirit given to us to cause us to overcome sin. That's what grace. He gives it to us as a gift to cause us to overcome sin. And we talked about how in the Christian church, they've turned grace into a certain meaning that says there's no more law. Okay? So this gospel, the one Messiah is talking about, must include with it two things. We talked about why all of these other Bibles are no good and why all of these other books are no good, unless they have the basis and foundation and the standard of righteousness. So the standard is the covenant. So this gospel must include becoming one in the covenant. It's an eternal covenant. Okay? So if you're a Gentile and you want to be grafted into the olive tree, which the Bible says the olive tree is the Israelite nation, you have to become one with the covenant. So any gospel that's preached to you must include the covenant. And if you understand that, and you understand that all have sinned, you also will understand that you have sinned against the covenant. And you need what? Repentance. And in order to become one with the covenant in terms of being in harmony with it, you need to receive our Father's righteousness. So this gospel of the kingdom must include the covenant and righteousness. It must include that. Now, how is the Messiah in relation to the covenant and righteousness? Well, the Bible tells us he is the Lamb of Yah that takes away the sin of the world. The Bible also tells us he is the Word made flesh. It also says he became sin for us who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of Yah in him. There's the gospel. Okay? For therein is the righteousness of Yah revealed. That's the gospel. So this gospel must include the Hebrew people as his chosen people with the covenant given to them, and any Gentile, because the words I just quoted to you came from Paul writing to converted Gentiles. So that must include you becoming one with that covenant in Israel through the Hebrew Messiah, to the Jew first and also to the Greek, and then receiving Father's spirit of perfect righteousness, that through you his righteousness can be revealed. That is the gospel of the kingdom that's going to go in all the world. Okay? And I think if you're listening to me right now, you have not heard that in any Christian church. You have not heard that from Judaism. You have not heard that from Islam. You have not heard that. And that is the proof. It has not gone into all the world. Somebody might ask, how and when is it to go in all the world? Remember the angel with the seal. Hold the winds until I have sealed the servants of our Most High in their foreheads. And I heard the number of them that were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. When they receive the seal, they will bring the message of the true gospel, this gospel of the kingdom. And notice what Messiah said, the gospel of the kingdom. That's what he said, Matthew chapter 24, verse 14. And this gospel of the kingdom. That's what he called it. And remember the question the disciples asked him before he ascended back to Father. They asked him a question. They said, it says, Acts chapter 1, verse 6, when they therefore were come together, they asked of him, saying, Master, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? So it's an Israelite kingdom. The gospel of the Israelite kingdom. It's an Israelite gospel. It includes covenant with Israel from the Father. It includes Messiah, who reconciles Israel to their Father. It includes righteousness, by which Father is being called a liar, and his spirit on his servants show that he's not. This gospel of the kingdom. Also, Malachi chapter 4, as we are in Malachi chapter 4, talks about the establishment of Yah's kingdom. And notice what it says in Malachi chapter 4, verse 4. Remember ye the law of Moses, my servant, which I commanded him in order for all Israel, with the statutes and judgments. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of Yahweh. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. The 144,000 are represented in Elijah. I'm going to send you Elijah before they come. And you're going to, before I do that, remember the law of Moses, my servant, for all Israel. It's an establishment, spiritual establishment of Israel, with the Gentiles being grafted in. Remember Isaiah 56. If any of you strangers want to serve Yahweh and keep his covenant and keep his Sabbath, he'll accept you. Because you're grafted in among them. Among whom? Among the Israelites. Okay? That's this gospel of the kingdom. So now, when we're talking about Sardis, he said, you have a name that live and you're dead. What happened? Brethren, if you look at the dark, what's called the Reform movement, this happened during the time period we're talking about, 508 AD to 1798 AD. During this time, there was the Protestant movement. During this time, we already mentioned there was the establishment of Judaism. During this time, we already mentioned there was the establishment of Islam. And both Islam, particularly Islam and Christianity, spread their gospel, for lack of a better word, throughout the entire world. They forced it on people through Catholic missionaries, through war. And in the case of Islam, they would just go into people's land and just kill whoever wouldn't convert and take captives the rest. That's how they spread Islam. And they spread it fast and they spread it aggressively. Okay? So that you had Israelites by blood in Africa, Islamic, to this day. Go to countries like Mali. There are a lot of Islam there, all the countries, or they're Christians. They're either Islam or they're Christians. So that the true Israelites, they had a name that lived. They were Israelites, but they're dead because now they're under either Islam or Christianity. Yeah, name that lived, and you're dead. Okay, you're the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and you're dead. Not only that. If you recall, we mentioned under both Smyrna and not Smyrna, Pergamos and Thyatira. Under those two churches, you recall we mentioned how the establishment of the Catholic Church, right, that caused a false religion. It was developed by the children of Yafet as part of their 2,000-year term of domination. They developed this religion with a white Jesus, European-looking Jesus, European gospel, European Christianity. Okay, they dominated with that. And you also recall how we said how the establishment of the Catholic Church, you had people that were what? Protesting the Catholic Church, asking for it to be reformed, which is why you had the Reformation, right? Now, after they had that Reformation, there was the establishment of many offshoots, which we call Christian denominations. Your Baptists, your Methodists, your Quakers, your Anglicans, all of this came out of the Reformation. And they spread that gospel wherever they could. Okay? Spread that one. And so you have a name that lives. Again, they say they represent the Lamb, but they're dead. They're dead. Okay, it's not this gospel of the kingdom. It's not. That's why he said, you have a name that lives, and you're dead. Okay? Verse 2, Revelation chapter 3. Let's start verse 1 again and read verse 1 and 2. And unto angel of the church in Sardis write, these things saith he that hath the 7 stars, 7 spirits of Yahweh, and the 7 stars. I know thy works, that thou hast a name, that thou livest, and art dead. Be watchful and strengthen the things which remain, that are ready to die. For I have not found thy works perfect before Yah. And again, talking about everything that we just discussed, where it's the spread of Islam and the spread of Roman Catholic Christianity that became Protestant also, and the spread of that through every place where the Hebrews lived. Mostly Africa is what we're talking about, but not just Africa. There were Hebrews in the North America called Indians, either killed or converted to Christianity. There are Hebrews in what's now called Australia, called Aboriginal, and now either converted to Christianity. Okay, there are Hebrews in one of the islands, or a couple of them that's in the Philippines. They're called Negros. So the Filipinos know about them. They're black, dark. They're called Negros, and they're second-class citizens, and they're converted to Christianity and Islam all over the world, because we have been spread all over the world. But the awakening changes everything, and that comes under Philadelphia, brethren. That comes under Philadelphia. But let's read now some more with Sardis. Verse 3, remember therefore how thou hast received and heard, and hold fast and repent. If therefore thou wilt not watch, I will come on thee as a thief, and thou shalt not know what hour I will come upon thee. Thou hast a few names even in Sardis, which have not defiled their garments, and they shall walk with me in white, for they are worthy. What is that? Not everybody went with Christianity, and not everybody went with Islam. Matter of fact, I think we all, now this is information age, right? So you know that the Igbo tribe in Nigeria stood fast on what they kept from Moses, right? They still inculcated some pagan ways. That's why they ended up scattered, right? But they still kept the covenant in terms of circumcision. They still had the original 10 Commandment covenant. They had that same in what's now called Ethiopia. Same thing. They had it. Okay, there are people even now in South Africa, South part of Africa, not South Africa, the nation, but the Lembas, they also had it. And in all those areas, whenever these people get discovered, right, these European Ashkenazis will come running down there with this Star of David. They didn't even have that originally. But these European Ashkenazis and her say, you're Jewish like us. And they come in that Star of David, deceiving the brothers. But these people have been there for centuries. They ran there from our original land, chased out by the Europeans, and they settled. They were in the mountains in Ethiopia. They still are. Descendants of Solomon. That's where you get Haile Selassie, because he's a bloodline descendant of the tribe of Judah. Well, he was. Okay. Same with the Igbo tribe. Same with the Ashantis in Ghana. Same thing. Even the Yoruba in Nigeria. And of course, the Lembas, and there's others. People that were descendants. Bantus are descendants of Israelites. So some of these people hung on to the truth. They did not receive the Christianity. They did not receive the Judaism. They did not receive the Islam. And they stood firm. Very few. That's why he says some. There has a few names in Sardis which were not defiled their garments, and they shall walk before me in white, for they are worthy. There's always been witnesses to the truth. Very few at sometimes, we know. But there's always been witnesses through the whole history. There's always a witness to the truth. Okay? And now that the awakening is underway, those witnesses are becoming multiplied. And again, we're in this information age. That's no accident either. Remember what Daniel said, men shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. That's where we live right now. Men run to and fro, and knowledge. And it's not just technological knowledge or knowledge of science. Knowledge of the Most High, knowledge of the truth shall be increased, because it has been darkened, as you can see, as we study for centuries. It's been darkened. Asatan's done his best to get rid of it. Okay, and the Bible said he would overcome the truth and prosper. And that's what he's done. But there's always a witness, always witnesses, okay, to the truth. So he said there's a few, even in Sardis, even in the midst of Islam, even in the midst of Judaism, even in the midst of Christianity with white Jesus, even in the midst of all that, there's still going to be some. The Igbos, the Yorubas, the Ashantis, the Lembas, Ethiopians. There's always going to be some. It's going to be a witness. Praise the Most High. That never left. Never left. Praise the Most High. Okay. Verse 5. He that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in white raiment, and I will not blot out his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. See, again, that's what people don't understand Messiah's role as Messiah and as high priest. Messiah represents the Father to us. He is not the Father. He is not God, as some people say God. He's not God. He's not the Father. He's the Father's prince. He represents the Father to us. Okay? But then he turns around and represents us to the Father. That's why he says here, I'm going to confess your name before my Father. If you remain faithful and you overcome, I'm going to confess your name to my Father. In other words, Father, I know this one. This is mine. Father, okay. Father will accept whatever Messiah confess. And he said, I'm confess your name. Your name will not be blotted out. See, there goes the always once saved, always saved foolishness out the window. Because for him to have to say that, he's saying there's a possibility you could be once written in the book of life and be blotted out. You could be once written in there and then turn around and get blotted out. Israel as a nation was in there. And we know very well. There's a lot of them who got blotted out. Okay, we know very well. Because Israel as a nation is the chosen nation. But we know very well. We also sent the Messiah to the Gentiles. We planned his murder. We also killed the prophets. We also worshiped Baal. And that's why we got kicked off our land. That's why we got put into slavery. So you know some people getting blotted out. Okay? So he said, but if you are faithful in Sardis, in the midst of that, I'm not going to blot you out. I'm going to confess your name before my Father. Praise the Most High Yah. I pray, brethren, that he confesses your name before the Father. Can you imagine? Like with Daniel, isn't it beautiful when the angel Gabriel came to Daniel and said, I have come to thee to give thee skill and understanding because you are greatly beloved. You are greatly beloved. Daniel, in third heaven, they know you, man. You greatly beloved. I mean, just for the Most High to call you his servant, you understand how high an honor that is? He said, so-and-so, my servant. He didn't call everybody his servant. And they don't care about everybody's name in the third heaven. But if they care about you that much to name you, you're in good shape. You're in good shape. Okay? And it's not according to as men on this earth name you. You could be famous on this earth and heaven don't even recognize who you are. You understand that? You could be famous on this planet and heaven doesn't even recognize who you are. Okay? But you could be a nobody on this planet and they know your name up there. And they got your robe ready. And they got your mansion ready. And nobody knows you here. See, it doesn't matter if men know you. Does the Most High know you? I pray he does. I pray he knows you. I pray you become one. You become one of his servants. I pray you stay faithful to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to this gospel of the kingdom. That his righteousness be shown in you and cover you perfectly. And that Messiah confesses your name. Your new name. Praise the Most High Yah. Shalom, brother.